Radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Well, good evening, Fade to Black. How you doing? Today is Monday, August 25th, 2025. Let's do this, man. Yeah. Another great, amazing week about to kick off here on Fade to Black tonight. John B. Alexander is with us, calling the show Government UFO Secrecy. Tomorrow night, Amy Westmoreland joins us. We're going to talk about manifesting life. She is amazing. Wednesday night, Daryl Inca is here. That's right. And we are going to be talking metaphysical all night long with Daryl. It's going to be amazing. And then Thursday, Scott Guariglia is with us. We're going to be talking about his pyramid research. This is going to be a fascinating show on Thursday night. An absolutely amazing week coming up. And I do have 6 events coming up, all of them in 2026, actually 7 at this moment. And I have been talking about this for the last couple of weeks. And I just want to let everybody know that I cleared my calendar for the rest of 2025 to focus on shooting Beyond Belief and that travel that goes on every single month. And then coming up in 2026, once I get my feet back on the ground and figure out the schedule, and I think I'll have it by then, I'm going to jump back into events around the country and around the world. So starting off in 2026 is the Conscious Life Expo. This is February 20th through the 23rd at the LAX Hilton. I have hosted this event for 12. I think this will be my 13th year, maybe my 14th year. There you go at the LAX Hilton. Right after that, the Contact Modalities Expo, May 1st through the 3rd, 2026 in Delavan, Wisconsin at Delavan Lake and the Resort. Then Contact in the Desert, May 28th through June 1st, 2026. Tickets will be on sale this Thanksgiving Day. And then I head to Peru for the Inca celebration of the sun. That's right, the winter solstice. That is June 23rd through July 1st, 2026. And then I come back from that and head over to the United Kingdom for the Monty Python Tour of Scotland. Yeah, man. And that is August 1st through the 9th. I come back from that and then turn around and head back to Peru and Easter Island. And that is November of 2026. Also with Brian Forrester. And the dates for that are not up on the website yet, but they'll be there soon. And I will let everybody know. All right. I mentioned earlier today on the news that I will be starting a new show. Just for YouTube at the moment, but it may branch out into other things. The show is called One Take, No Edits. That's it. And these will be 15 to 20 minute burst of thought, of consciousness. No edits, no nothing, no script, just looking straight into the camera and letting my mind go. Okay. All right. We've got a new video studio set up for this. It is great. We are just adjusting things and getting it ready. But it looks amazing and it's going to be a lot of fun. And the studio is set up for me to just go, well, all right, let's go. And something pops in my head. I'm going to sit down and crank this stuff out. It's going to be a lot of fun. Again, one take, no edits. Coming to you soon. We may branch it out onto other networks. That's being talked about. But right now, we're just going to take a run at YouTube. Yeah. And just pop it off there because it's easy. Right? It's easy. All right. So there you go. Let's get this week started tonight. John B. Alexander is here. Finally, I might add. Been looking forward to this conversation for years. He's a Ph.D. He's a retired Army colonel, and he's the author of Reality Denied and UFOs, Myths, Conspiracies, and Realities. Tonight, we're going to talk about his life, his journey. We're going to do that as well as where we are today with government secrecy, what is going on, the government and the Pentagon and everybody else looking into this, talking about it. We have Congress, we have Capitol Hill, all of this, and we're going to be discussing that tonight with John. And now here's the thing. John's got a crazy open mind. He's an explorer of extraordinary phenomena. He has been to 8 continents. He has met shamans in the Amazon and the Himalayas. He's done telepathic experiments with dolphins. That's right. He's a pioneer of consciousness studies. He's practiced psychokinesis, firewalking, and served as a founding board member of the International Remote Viewing Association and the past president of IANS. Now, check this out. He retired from Los Alamos National Laboratory. He has contributed to the Army Science Board, Council on Foreign Relations, NATO, and was a senior fellow with the DoD University. Widely honored, including induction into multiple halls of fame, he studied under Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross at Harvard, MIT, and UCLA. He's the author of several influential books. We're going to talk about all of that and much more. But first, I would like to welcome to Fade to Black for the first time the one and only John B. Alexander.
Who are you talking about?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Don't know if I know that guy.
You know, John, welcome to the show. This is going to be a great conversation tonight, but let me get this out of the way. You get the first-time guest disclaimer. Yep, we got to do it, young man. So this is the first-time guest disclaimer. John, it's just you and I sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends. Where the conversation starts, it starts. Where it ends, but we're going to end as friends. Now, you have to accept so we can move on.
Okay, we can do it.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I'm gonna take that as a yes. I want to start with you in the past, and but before we do that, just in the interest of transparency, I want to talk about our sound check that we had earlier. I feel that somebody was interfering with you. Can I tell everybody what happened?
Well, that happens multiple times. If you're talking about the Minnie Mouse thing, yeah.
Yeah. Somebody's messing with you, man. I've done thousands of shows, John. You know this. I've never heard that. And so, okay, so everybody, let me tell you what happened. I would love to have John's take on this. So I'm listening to him talk, and it was coming across sped up, and he sounded like, he says Mickey Mouse. That's pretty close, very high pitched, very fast. I could see his lips moving, but it was what I was hearing. I thought I was imagining it. I said, no, we got a problem. And then, so John's talking to me, and it came back. What? You've got to be kidding me. And then John fixed it. He came back and we got everything fixed. But that was one of the most bizarre things I've ever gone through. Have you been messed with by agencies in the past? Is this something that surprises you?
No, we're using different systems. I was on Zoom earlier today and some others. I've had it with several different systems. And what I find is if I just check out and come back in again, it sorts itself out. But it seems to be across purposes. I have no idea why or how or why just checking back in would fix it.
You're interfering with their subsystem.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's one possibility, I suppose.
It was wild. I have come to terms and accepted when I was a sportscaster, John, when I was doing sportscasting, nothing, never a problem, never an issue at all. Start doing this stuff, you know, and it's just like, you just got to go with it. You know, it's just part of the game these days. So you can't freak out or try to, no, you just go with it. And it's part of the game. And speaking of the game, let's go back. Let's go on the Wayback Machine. For those that have heard your name a lot over the years and read your name, but may not know a whole lot about you, I want to get a little bit of a foundation of where your mindset was back in the early days. And the reason for that is when you look at documents, and some of them are decades and decades old now, and you look at some of these documents about different things and different meetings and different people corresponding, your name pops up all the time, whether it's in a leadership role, a consulting role, an opinion role, or something else, but there you were always there. So I want to go back. Were you under a mindset of the government knew something about UFOs and ET and contact and was keeping it from us and you and everybody else, and you were trying to get to that? Or were you a part of that system and you knew that there were secrets that were being held and the public was being kept from them? Which, you know, it's one of two ways. Where was your mind back then?
Well, when is back then? I'm a lot older than you are. Remember, I can remember World War II.
Yeah, right. Let's go to, I mean, something like, I forget what the group was called that was put together at outside of a base back in the 80s. And in that group, which you had, I think,
theoretical physics.
Yeah. Okay, so
well, that's way late in the game. That's decades into the game, actually.
Even though it's 40 years ago now, isn't that nuts? Yeah, it's crazy. Let
me go, since you want to go way back. My first recollection of dealing with UFOs is in 1947. And I went to a very unusual grade school, and we had an internal radio system, and the kids were allowed to give talks on whatever you wanted to talk about. I was 10 years old at the time and gave a talk on UFOs. I mean, this is when they're just first hitting public acknowledgement at all. So my interest goes, like I say, many decades back, and then was able to go forward when I got into the military. And what you're talking about now is actually decades into the military, because in the 80s, I joined the Army in 1956.
Okay.
And so I'd been off doing other Army stuff for some time. And by the time you're talking about, I was already a lieutenant colonel. By the way, I had been enlisted for a long time before that, so it came up as a Mustang. I got into a rather unusual job, but I was in a position where I had access to resources, a lot of friends, and it was more internally. The thought was, I'll give you our going in position.
Okay.
Roswell's real. That the government has something they got their hands on, don't know what to do with it, and would like to get the information out. So let's get together. And I brought together for that organization people from the Army, Navy, Air Force, did not have Marines, but then the intelligence community, all those three-letter agencies, and also from aerospace industry. And the going in requirements is we had to know who you were. You had to be interested in the topic, have the top secret and SCI level clearances. And it was literally an old boy net because they were all males and brought people together and had a series of sessions. And say what we found was quite different than what we expected going in.
Oh, you can't just drop that right there and move on. Okay.
Well, no, what my position on that, and this is what's written in the UFO book, was basically nobody was minding the shore. Everybody knew the whole, the background and all the folklore and things like that. Many of them knew each other, some didn't. No, and I know we're going to transition to now, but my experience was very different from all of the ones that are currently coming out. I had ended up with a director or deputy director of all those three-letter agencies that you know about. Many of them we caught off guard. One, and they all said, there's no requirement, we don't do that. I understand where that goes from, quote, the legacy program and that. But one of my favorite examples was I was talking to a commanding general of one of those three-letter agencies. And he says, A, we don't do that. There's no requirement. B, I'll tell you about the ones I saw. So he had had a personal experience many years before that. And still was saying, now, could he have been denying it? That's, a possibility. It seems kind of strange that he would say, hey, I've seen these things. The other thing that was of interest, though, is here's a guy who's now in a position to control a lot of resources and obviously has elements all over the world, and chose not to do it. Personal interest. And one of the things I stress is the difference between personal interest and institutional responsibility.
Sure.
I mean, there are a lot of people at high level, and we can talk about some of them, but as you know, many of them have had, like this guy, personal experiences. You can get into Jim Simmelvan, who's the guy who, the chief of staff or the director of CIA, who now admits that he's an abductee, himself. So you have many, many folks like that. I also found in the scientific circles a similar thing. We're not going to talk about this officially, but the talks like the good old boy talks we're having right now, that let me tell you, and go into personal experiences that they had. I might mention, just for blocking thing, in my UFO book, the first line that I wrote, there are a number of people who wrote things, but it was UFOs are real. And I mean that in the very real physical sense. And it ends with a paragraph that basically says, whatever this is, it is more complex than we can possibly imagine.
And that's the way it has to be. We're not smart enough yet to fully grasp it. We're not there yet. We're getting there,
yeah.
but
I think it's beyond comprehension. As you know, the presentation I gave at the Psy Games, my take is that there's a whole host of phenomena and that they're all interrelated. UFOs, abductions, you mentioned, firewalking and some of those things, psychokinesis, did all of that. And the human consciousness is kind of a cross-cutting piece in all of that. And again, I think we're barely at the front end of trying to understand about that. In fact, the UFO book, I said, not only do we not understand it, we're not at the position of knowing how to answer the right questions yet.
I'm going to go back to Roswell for a second. I have said over the years that I'm a fan of radio and hosts, so I have studied radio. It's my job, of course, but I have studied radio and hosts my entire life. And one of them that I still have the biggest respect for is a guy named Long John Neville.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And he was
you are going back now.
Yeah, he was great. I've listened to so many of his shows, thousands of hours of his shows. And but Long John, who was on the air from the 50s all the way through to the early 1970s, right? So he had a great run and a huge audience, 50 million people listening, a night. WOR, right, out of New York. But there was now Long John had everybody on that show, and he covered UFOs extensively. And when he would bring on these guests in the 1950s, and you listen to those shows, 50s and 60s, they talked about everything. That he had Kenneth Arnold on the show all the time, right? But you know what they didn't mention that entire time? They talked about Nazi UFOs, and they talked about the different 1952 UFO flap, and they covered everything except Roswell. Roswell was never mentioned on his show because he didn't know about it, except for that cover story, right, on the Roswell Daily Record in 1947. That cover-up was a real cover-up. It was kept out of the media, and it wasn't mentioned in books. It wasn't mentioned anywhere all the way until 1980 when it resurfaced. But you mentioned that there was a Roswell feeling and vibration in the military when you were there, that Roswell was real. Was Roswell a subject in the military? It wasn't a subject in civilian life, as I just mentioned.
Well, let's differentiate now between what the military and, remember, there's millions of people in the military. And when you amortize that over time, even more. And as I've said, there's a lot of people with personal interest who had unusual experiences, who had seen UFOs and things like that. So again, the difference between individuals who are interested, that was us, and institutional responsibility. One of the things I want to stress is, as a lieutenant colonel, I was in a position to kind of make some things happen. Mm-hmm. As long as we didn't make waves, too big. In fact, what I'll tell you, I had run several of the sessions that you've heard about where the group got together, and I finally went and saw my 3-star boss and said, "Boss, got to tell you what I've been doing because I don't want you to see it in the Washington Post first." Right. And his response was, "Gee, that's kind of interesting, but my 4-star boss does, we need to go see him." And it was, very much, that's interesting. Matter of fact, I would mention that the CG, the 4-star level, he said, "Well, what can I do to help?" And I mentioned I would like some introductions, and that did happen. But importantly, from my perspective, we never got our hands slapped. Stop, right. Don't do that, sit down, shut up. And there were programs unrelated to this where, I got into boxes, and I may not have been able to find out what was in it, but, it was sit down, you don't do that. Or in a couple of cases where they said people came in and read some things, had to sign some papers of what they called inadvertent disclosure, that you've either learned something or figured out. For me, that never happened in the UFO arena. But as you mentioned, remember, we're talking the 80s now, but you're quite right about how there's a huge break from 47 and that until the book started coming out much later. I think Stan Friedman was certainly one of the guys who brought that out. By the way, I'll tell you right up front, I can make a strong case in both directions. Now, key is some event did happen. There's absolutely nobody who says nothing happened. The big question is, what happened?
No, continue. When when we look at, not to stick on Roswell, but Roswell is important for a lot of reasons. But I think that the main reason for me to not let go of Roswell, because I understand both sides too as well, but that memo that Hout released out of Roswell Army Airfield at that time, when all of the world's leaders in brainiacdom, right? Everything was in New Mexico. Everything was in Los Alamos. The most secret, important technology in the entire world was in New Mexico. So, and it was right on the heels of World War II. Loose lips sink ships, right? And so to do a press release out of an Army airfield at that time had to have been written and rewritten and checked and double checked and approved and reapproved all the way up the chain of command. And I
don't agree with that.
Why?
I think it could easily, and I think what did happen is they wrote it, and it just went out and got ahead of them. That there was something super secret, I think that's absolutely true. Again, I can argue both sides of this,
sure,
up and down. Something can inadvertently get out or get ahead is quite easy to do. Putting the genie back in the bottle is much more difficult, obviously. But pointedly, it did not attract a lot of attention at that time, and it went well. I would also argue that, remember, the stuff they said, it was flown to Dallas, Fort Worth area, and then on to Wright Field. Los Alamos is right there, as was Sandia at the time. I mean, the top brains in the world are very close, and we did not go in that direction.
There were a couple of other key moments there. You mentioned 1947, and 1947 was a big deal around the Department of Defense and the government for a lot of different reasons. The creation of the CIA, creation of the Air Force. Wright-Patterson is now Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. 1947, they created the Foreign Technology Division, right? All timing on the heels of not only Kenneth Arnold, but Roswell. And all of these things, bang, 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 happened right in a row. 1947 was a huge year, wasn't it? And they also learned the art of the cover-up. Right?
The cover-ups have been going on forever. But one of the things I think you missed in there of what was going on, it was something called the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the advent of the Cold War. And by then, Soviet Union, it was right around that time, Soviet Union popped their first nuke. That's really one of the key issues into understanding all of this and what Roswell, the incident, may have been with other. Up until that time, till early 47, we were the only country in the world that had nuclear weapons. And certainly the only ones who, to this day, have ever employed them. But you've also got the whole geopolitical circumstance that has got to be taken into account at that time, why people did some of the things that they did. One of the critical issues, in my view, that came out at that time was the Twining memo. Now, that's pretty famous. Sure, you're quite familiar with that. Now, what's of interest to me is, remember, it went out initially classified, and it was to the Air Force. They're talking to their own people, saying, hey, this is real. There wasn't nothing's happening here, look. But what they did not say is, and oh, by the way, we got one of these things. Or we got some, it was, the top, and of course, the guy went on to become Twining, the chief of staff of the Air Force. So
Stanton Friedman said to me once on this program, he said, out of everything, and he lived around a mountain of documents, mountains of documents. He said, out of everything that I have, he said, the one document that I can say is the real thing is the Nathan Twining document. That's an authentic document. Yep. Everything else we can put question marks on. But that document, I am confident, is 100% genuine.
I am too. And again, what he did not say was, he said, it's not hallucinations. They're not making this stuff up. These are real incidents that are happening. But he didn't say, and he didn't even infer at that point, this is a national security incident. And when you get to the local stuff now, they say immediately they knew this was the most important national security event that could ever have happened, and somehow created this long super secret program that theoretically goes on today, but as the quote, the legacy program. For sure.
So going on the Wayback Machine, has the government always known about UFOs and contact and have made their own contact and have been misleading and lying to the public this entire time? Right now, we'll get to the second half of the show. We'll talk about today. But is that your opinion from the 1950s, 60s, and 70s and 80s?
Absolutely not. Mostly, again, you've got to put this in from a military perspective. What DOD is responsible for is defending the nation against threats, whatever those threats may be. You've got the Cold War that went on until 1990, and then all the things. So you, in my view, you have to look at all of this in the geopolitical context, and you talk to people that says, what's important to you? And one of the things that's not biting them is a UFO. It's just not biting any of interest, yes, but is it biting my ass? No.
And what do we do with, and I know you scratched your head about these different incidences and rumors, contact at Edwards Air Force Base, contact at Holloman. We can even believe it or not, Rendlesham was over 40 years ago now. It's got Rendlesham is a modern case, but
that's a great case, by the way.
It's my favorite.
Absolutely case. Real. It is. It's mine too. No Chuck Halt, and talked to the people involved. Jim Peniston, he said, went up and touched it. I think absolutely real. There were a lot of things that were not known about it at the time, like Bentwaters was the most forward nuclear weapons storage area we had, the only nukes in Europe at the time. So lots of political sensitivity around it. Lots of witnesses. And that's one of the, unlike many cases where you study them and they just dissipate over time, that's one that gets stronger over time.
Yeah, for sure. But what about Edwards and Holloman and you go back with Robert Ebenegger and the Holloman film and what was that ever discussed in the military?
Well, in the military, no. Later, do you know who Bill Coleman was?
Of course.
You say, of course. He's the one who told me I went and got the tape.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it was let's say A12 article, a prototype. What he told me happened was that they were A12 is of course predator to the SR-71s and that developed by CIA, switched to the Air Force. That they had a flame out and said, got a choice. We can throw this away or we can land it which understand that they did. Did they throw a cover over it? And were they happy to have stories about UFOs on it? Absolutely. But understand that one's ours.
Right. Here's the weird part about that. And I still, God, that's such a great story. When Emmenegger, his producer, and one other person said that they viewed the entire film, they put 8 seconds in their documentary, and you know that, of course, and which, you know, just showed the white dot coming down. But they said that the ET had a turban, gray skin, a big nose, and had like a magic wand in one hand, right? He had some kind of device in one hand. Came down flowing robes, came down the stairs, had a couple of emissaries behind him, and they clearly saw this on the film. The military later, the Pentagon, according to Emmenegger, told him those were actors. That was a staged thing that we did. And Emmenegger's like, man, I don't know. You know, so what do we do with that part of, that part of this? Emmenegger was allowed to use those 8 seconds, but couldn't use the rest of it.
Yeah, I'll have talked to Bob on that. I think he's a very nice guy. Now, do you remember Apollo 11?
Yes, I do. I watched it.
What did we do when they returned?
What did we do when they returned?
Well, what did they do? My point here is, Chuck, that they went into isolation for weeks, and that was because of concern about microbes that they might have brought back. But now you're telling us, or want us to believe, that some guy with a turban and a big nose comes down and interacts. The same thing with the discussion on did Eisenhower, meet with ET on there.
Right.
If we're worried about microbes from the moon coming back that might bring back some new disease, I mean, they were super concerned about that. Later they dropped their concern. You didn't have the long isolation periods. But we're not worried about that. Now, where this gets really disconcerting, though, is when you get back to the abductions and interactions. Remember, there have been reports of interactions between humans and sentient non-humans throughout the entirety of human history. In my view, that they fly in little tin cans is a fairly new wrinkle to a very old story. This is where we get into, as you saw my talk on what do you mean by a UFO, and I now also come down much more into the ultra-terrestrial approach as opposed to in fact, I come down against ET, just not because these events don't happen, but because that explanation is just too simple.
But that's only if it's in our control, right? Where we would have the ability to control contact like that. But if you don't have the ability to control, if they're going to just land and walk off of the ship, they're going to land and walk off of the ship. How can we stop them from doing that? Or go into an Airstream trailer for a couple of weeks before we start talking to them?
But remember, there are a number of instances where that did happen, where they have had landing. I'll look at Sicario, for instance, where they talk about beings outside running around. But that's very different from how I've got them. What I do control is Holloman Air Force Base. Mm-hmm. That is our turf. And we do control what goes on there. I can just tell you what Bill Coleman told me, and he was a believer, by the way.
Yeah, he was.
Well, he had his own sighting. It was totally unexplained, and said when he got to he had a public affairs for the Air Force, He said when he got there, he tried looking for it in Blue Book and could not find the report that he submitted.
What about you? Have you had your own sightings? Not the let's go back to the 50s and 60s and 70s. No. Did you see anything back then?
No. The one that I think you probably know about is our friend Chris Bledsoe.
Yeah, Chris Bledsoe. We'll get to that. I've had my own. I'm not going to waste time right now with anything, but I've had my own sightings with groups of people that have been absolutely crazy, mind-blowing. Do I know what they are? Some were really big, right? Do I know? No. Is it us or them? No, I don't have any of those answers, but I do know that for me, it encourages me to chase the phenomenon, to try to figure out what's going on. Is it us? What is it that we are witnessing? And so many have done absolutely the same thing. And to have the government turn around and say, there's nothing to see here. Well, that's a lie. That's not being cool, because
that aspect is true. But one of the things that you really do have to be concerned about in the government is the religious context as well. That you get into all the remote viewing and all of the phenomena we were involved in. They go, yes, you can do that. That's the work of the devil. Right. And there are those at very high levels who would see this as demons coming in. And they do put unfortunately, a biblical context on it. Again, this is where I point out one of my slides, as you saw, was, the government says, or the Pentagon says, they said the Pentagon says nothing. It's a big stone building with 29,000 people and 30,000 opinions. So you got people all over the spectrum as for the you got a number who have seen things. And in fact, I remember being out of CIA headquarters and talking to people and coming on and saying, well, let me tell you about what I saw. So you have that, but that does not transition into the Now, one of the things I also say is it has to do with disclosure. Disclosure has happened and happened and happened. People say frequently that the government's denied the existence. Well, that's not really true. They have been saying for a long time that UFOs are real, the physical things that are out there. It doesn't say what they are, but that the government has denied their existence across the board. Just simply not true. Now, when you get back to the ET issue or abductions, that gets different. But again, as I pointed out earlier, very high level people had their own experiences as well. But from an institutional perspective, how does that stack up with the Cold War, or right now what's going on in Gaza or the Middle East or Iran? I mean, and those things have been going on constantly. Remember, that's the backdrop for everything that the Department of Defense is involved in.
What do we do with the conversations that have been going on for decades about crash retrievals? I live a mile away from Skunk Works. I'm out here in Palmdale. I don't know. Did you know that, John?
Yeah, I did not know. I didn't know where you are. No.
Yeah, well, okay. So now you know. I'm at the front gates of Skunk Works, and Edwards is 7 miles, up the road. Yeah. And right here I have Air Force Plant 42. There's all kinds of really cool secret aircraft flying all over Palmdale, being tested every day. And at Edwards, it's an amazing place to live. But the rumors, right, about these crash retrievals and what has been going on. What do we make of that? And is our government in possession of a crashed craft not of this earth?
There are those who would say yes. What I
I
can
want the
tell you,
secrets, though, John. I want the secrets. I want the secrets.
I am like all of you, waiting for the shoe to drop. Remember, Ben Rich was a friend of mine. If you
He's
know the
great.
Skunk Works, you know him. And this is a topic that we discussed in some detail. And what he told me is, I want the propulsion system, I want the stealth, I want the blah, blah, blah. And he had a shopping list of things. Could he have been lying to me? My point in this is, could these people have lied to me? The answer is certainly, but there's an awful lot of them at very, very high levels. You get back to Roswell and that, Edward Teller was a personal friend, had him over for dinner. Now, one of the times what we did was had Hal Puthoff up, and we had a discussion. There's pictures of this, I think, on the internet, you know, where Hal was describing 0-point energy to him. We discussed UFOs. By the way, it was not something he dismissed or anything like that.
You discussed UFOs with Edward Teller.
Yeah.
Man, shut the front door. Man, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
But what he said was, you're looking in the wrong area. And he did not mean because of the secret program. He was talking about looking through soda straws up, you know, into the sky and things like that. See, our premise, this gets back to the ATP, was if 5 people were in the loop and Roswell is real, Teller would have been one of them. Because you got to remember, at 47, we're still working on the transition between fission and fusion, i.e. the, quote, hydrogen bomb. And anybody who's, you know, watched the Oppenheimer movie, you got pieces of it. Yeah, Teller did not get along with Oppenheimer because Oppenheimer was not big down dropping the bomb concerned and all the issues that are played there. Teller wanted to go straight to fusion, which was going to be and is much more powerful. So there was huge ethical debates on that. So our thinking was, you know, again, if 5 people, here's the guy who knows more about energy than anybody else in the world, would have been him. I got no indication of that, but we did discuss it.
Well, Ben Rich, you know, he's been attributed to a quote that he's apparently said, many times. He didn't just say it just once. He said it many times.
We can take ET home.
We have the technology to take ET home. Yeah.
Again, I am very familiar with those things. What he told me was, I have a shopping list, and he did appoint a guy from the Skunk Works as my main point of contact into that. I'll give you his name because I learned recently he has since died, but it was Butch Sheffield, who Butch, by the way, was the first guy to ever bail out of the SR-71.
He certainly was.
Yeah, not a great day, but but you know, we dealt with it, and I gotta say, could he have lied? Possibly, or does that mean he's not in the loop?
What do you make of? I wanted to ask you this for a long time, and we're right there on this subject. What do you make of the Wilson memo? And the reason why I bring that up is because there's some very specific points that Rear Admiral Wilson brings up in that conversation, where he says he was at a company out west. We can assume that that was Skunk Works, and they tell him, the attorney, the president of the company, and an engineer for the company told Wilson that they have a craft and that they know it can fly, but they can't fly it. Do you want to see it? Now, what do we do with that? Actually,
well,
what do you, before we get into the memo itself and its authenticity and everything, it certainly seems that when Oak Shannon came out and said, I introduced those two, and yes, and yes, and yes, and yes. And you knew Oak Shannon for a long time. So
Oak was the reason I went to Los Alamos.
Yes, that's right.
After I retired.
That's right. So
but you also remember that I worked with Eric for years as well.
You worked with Eric. So when you look at this memo, like I said, without getting into the memo itself, you know all of the players that are part of this memo. But what do you make of that comment from Admiral Wilson about coming out here to this company out west, and they said that they have a craft and they know it can fly, but they can't fly it yet. Do you want to see it?
I have no personal knowledge of it. It is consistent. Those comments are consistent with the information that's supposedly coming out now. But
it
as you mentioned from the onset, the pieces never all fit.
Can I ask you? You mentioned this earlier. When you go back to the first theoretical group, or one of the first theoretical groups that you were part of, Ryan Wood was there, I believe, or it was Bob Wood, Oak Shannon.
Bob was there, certainly not Ryan.
Yeah, it wasn't Ryan. Ryan was still riding a Schwinn Stingray along with me probably at that time. Mm-hmm. But so it was Bob Wood, it was you, it was Oak Shannon, a couple of others. But one of the things that you guys discussed in Oak Shannon's notes, which were so interesting, you guys discuss a chain of command on who should know about this and who shouldn't, all the way through to the president and vice president. Very interesting on how that was put together and why certain people should know and why others shouldn't. Right?
I do not recall this. What I do know is one of the rules was no notes. And obviously, Oak went home and wrote notes because
yes, he did.
It came out later. And by the way, the main players, the ones you mentioned, as far as I know, there are some that I don't even remember, but all of those three-letter agencies were there.
Were they there to learn, or were they there to bring something to the table with their knowledge?
Our anticipation was that they would bring things in. The experience would be more the earlier that they were there to see, because everybody was saying, I thought you did, I don't do that. Don't you do that? You know, it was a strictly lots of finger pointing as to, I thought this was in your bailiwick.
Some things never change, do they? It's still going on today.
Oh, yeah.
Still going on today. How close were we, if we go back to 47, Kenneth Arnold, Roswell, and then 1952 and Washington, D.C., and all of those fabulous Pentagon and Air Force press conferences that they were having back then, LeMay, and everybody just popping in on this. How close were we to disclosure back then? We think that we're close today, but it really seems like things were going in another direction back then. Were we pretty close to disclosure?
I think the answer is they had no idea what to disclose.
Right.
I mean, but you have Truman, saying here are the things flying across the sky. You've got Twining was initially classified, but then later declassified, saying these are real. This is not a hallucination. See, one of my questions on disclosure is, what do you mean? Are we talking about UFOs are real? And I say there, over and over, and the UFO community refuses to take yes for an answer. They've been saying that all along. That's very different. There's a brand new interview with Jim Zealandia. Now, his quote disclosure basically is that, and this runs against counter to things we discussed before, but not only is ET, has he been here, but he's walking among us. At a certain, by the way, that is accepted by 20% of the global population, that ET is here and walking among us. you get into the wild speculation that say ET is us, that you have genetic engineering transformations that took place back in antiquity from, Homo erectus to, Homo sapiens, and changes that take place. My position there is, if ET is here and walking among us, does not appear to be for our benefit. If you look at all of the macro problems going on, certainly not doing anything on climate, on poverty, on the various diseases, et cetera, et cetera. So, one of the questions is, if ET, what's their agenda if it is separate from?
We're going to head towards a break, but just a quick question, and then we'll pick it up when we come back. The rest of your answer. Here today, we have this 3-eye atlas situation happening. Everything around it and surrounding it is totally foreign to us, and certainly because it's only the third interstellar object that we have ever observed. So we don't know a whole lot about what to expect, but it's got a strange trajectory, came straight at Earth, orbiting the sun, coming out on the other side of the sun on October 29th, Halloween, by the way, right, on its closest approach to Mars. But having it on the ecliptic with us, the universe is a big place, and it really seems pretty deliberate to pick out our star system, cruise by us, orbit the sun, and then come out the other side. Avi Loeb has said what he has said. Others have said what they have said. But we've got an interesting opportunity here. What do you make of 3-eye atlas? And is there a possibility in your eyes that this could be non-natural? Let's go with that.
It would be highly improbable. And yes, it is interesting. And the universe is a big place. Remember, the number of habitable planets out there. We get into sextillions, which is 21 zeros. That's habitable planet, and that was a decade ago, and it keeps increasing. That somebody would engineer, or somebody would engineer that. Is it possible? Certainly within the limits of theoretical possibility. I think probability is a different story.
When Avi presented, now this was something else. Everything about AI Atlas is interesting. None of it is uninteresting. But he said it is generating its own light. Right? Now that opens up we've never seen an object generate its own light. We've seen objects reflect light, right? Comets are reflecting light. They're not creating their own light.
Well, suns and stars are generating light.
What? Okay. Why? Because of fission and fusion and nuclear, a nuclear core. So that opens up a whole nother possibility here with AI Atlas if it is generating its own light. What do you make of that part? That's whew. I mean, I love letting my imagination go. I love being a kid. I'll never stop being a kid. But you start to jump into those areas, and it just shows you how little we know.
Well, as I said at the outset, this is more complex than we can possibly imagine.
What are we going to do?
That certainly adds to it.
Right. What are we going to do? It comes out. Now, okay. This is where just let your John B. Alexander head go crazy, because I've seen pictures of you with shamans, okay? I know you've got an imagination. I know you can let it go. This ship comes around October 29th. NASA, every platform that we have, we're going to be collecting data from everything that we can point at it. We're going to collect images and video. We're going to do all of that. What if it is a spacecraft? What does this planet do? How do we react? How do you react?
thought you said we're going to break. Where do you, how many? Yeah, I think it's pretty complex.
It is.
I'm happy to address it.
How are you going to react?
But, the answer is yes, you still have to go to work or go to school or whatever. That the day-to-day stuff is going to eat up 99.99% of the people. There will be people who are intensely interested. But from a human life perspective, it doesn't change much.
Let's take our break right here. That's a good answer. Although I'm going to debate you on it when we go back. Our guest tonight, the one and only John B. Alexander. John, you stay right there. I am your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. We will be back right after this short break. Stay with us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and get the Fade to Black official podcast. 2,000 episodes, all of them commercial free for just $2 a month. Watch Into the Vortex on Gaia TV. It's Fade to Black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? How you doing? Jimmy Church here. Special announcement. Get your Fade to Black T-shirts. That's right. Help support the show. Help support everything that we do over here. We've got 2 T-shirts. We've got 2 ways to get them. Get your Fade to Black T-shirt today. Go Backley Tappy. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut. Jimmy Church, Gaia TV, Fade to Black, here at Machu Picchu with Brian Forster and Hidden Inca Tours. Amazing tour so far, Brian, but we're here to announce what we're going to do next year in 2026. What's going on?
Okay, November 2026, we're going to have our major tour of Peru and Bolivia, either a pre or post tour of Paracas and Nazca on the coast. And then after that, 6 days in Easter Island.
Bucket list, Easter Island. Come join Brian and I and his amazing team here at Hidden Inca Tours for Peru, Bolivia, and Easter Island. Signing out. Say goodbye, Brian.
Bye, gang.
River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, John B. Alexander is with us. And John has been chasing knowledge forever on this subject, and also consciousness phenomena, the paranormal, the supernatural, all of that, telepathy, remote viewing, telekinesis, travel the world, chasing all of this, trying to figure out humanity. And it's absolutely an honor and a privilege to have him here with us tonight. And John, so that was the before portion of the show. This is, I want to jump into the now, and I set that up with talking about AI Atlas before the break. And I think that I agree with you about one part of your answer. But it's this. Let's say a UFO, a craft, a giant whatever, lands during rush hour on the 405 freeway here in Southern California, right? Blocks traffic. All right, well, you know what? People are going to jump out of their cars. They're going to live stream. The news is going to be there. We're going to have the helicopters. It's all going to be there. And 15 minutes of crazy town. 16 minutes, people are going to be honking their horn saying, get that thing off the freeway. All right, I got to get home. And I life goes on, right? I tend to agree with you on that one. I think there's going to be a certain amount of shock and awe at the beginning, but you know what? Does it change things? Well, yes, I do believe that it changes things, because the consciousness side of humanity, that answer is now there. And so we have a reason for the future, and we have a reason to make contact with our brothers and sisters that are out there in the cosmos. Because being alone, that's a different thing and a different mindset for consciousness and humanity. So I think it would change the framework of the world.
I think there's two different issues. One is the question is, are we alone in the universe? And the answer is no. I mean, and you can be a pure materialist and understand that. Again, we talked about the number of planets out there. You start doing the math on that says even if you believe that some chemicals got together and the lightning strikes came in and life evolved from that, at some point that happened elsewhere in the universe as well.
Trillions and trillions of times.
Oh, many trillions are small compared to
yeah.
Like I say, 21 zeros, but
that's a lot of zeros.
That's habitable planets. Now, I think if you want to know what happens, the model for that, I argue, is 9/11. If you remember what happened on 9/11, I mean, bang, everything in the world, but certainly in the U.S., got focused, on New York and the Pentagon, and things happened, and they went nonstop with that. And then it wasn't long before the other things started to creep in. Then you've got to remember, from the reporting perspective, they're in this for business, so they've got to get advertisements into that. So I think if you look at, like I say, 9/11 is a classic one, because that was a major event where the entire country was focused on that. And you look at then how that dissipated. I mean, now, we talk about 9/11, that was decades ago. And, but the model is that or other major catastrophes, I think, is from a news cycle, the model, and I think from the human perspective as well. I've looked at this quite a bit, actually. If you look at what happens, say, with a hurricane, and how quickly shelves, dissipate, everything gets cleared out. People are in grabbing, hoarding, and that. Our problem, or the way our businesses are set up, we generally are a just-in-time model, which means that things arrive at the time that they're needed. Your grocery store, that has to have a continuous supply coming up. there's less than a 3 day supply of food that's available in any given area without the macro system taking over. So when you start looking at that, people get hungry. That sort of takes priority over. Isn't there something interesting happening? Some weird thing landed out there. Yes, it did. But I think
it's such a fascinating way to look at it, because when you get out there, like I have and others have, and certainly you have, you get out there in the world and you see a way of life out there with so many people, whether it's kids digging through garbage dumps for food or whatever it may be. Are they concerned with alien life? Are they concerned with consciousness? Are they concerned with, what they've got to serve? They're in survival mode. Are these things that they consider and ponder?
Yeah.
They may never have even heard of them.
The classic hierarchy of need.
Yeah.
And the stuff that we're talking about are the people that are way up here who have the luxury of being able to even contemplate these things. But if you're starving, consciousness is not part of your main concern.
You might not even know what consciousness is. In our version of it, what we discuss, it's just, they're in a whole nother mode. And it's really, sometimes I find myself getting a little bit angry with those that are dealing with, in a very public sense, first world problems. And it's just like, man, we can fix everything that is wrong with this planet with the wave of a hand, over and over and over again, but we don't.
We don't.
It's crazy how we don't do it. It doesn't make any sense to me, and I just get angry. But you know what, though? And again, I went through your presentation, and I've known you for a very long time, but going through your presentation and you showing your experiences around the world, I find that extraordinary. It's a life well led. But you and I have been out there, and when you're driving down a road, with leaving your hotel, right, and you're driving somewhere in the desert or in the mountains, and you're driving through a village, and you're driving past these homes that don't have cars, they have donkeys, right? And you see it all over the place. It's not just a one-time thing. It's all over the place. But you know what these kids do? They run up and smile and wave. It's extraordinary to see that as you roll by like your Princess Di in a motorcade, right? It's some nice car. And, it's bizarre to me where they're still happy. They're still human.
A soccer ball can do wonders.
It's amazing, isn't it?
You see that all over the world.
All over the world. All over the world.
By the way, one of the things I did want to throw in, because they said the 8 continents, and you mentioned that. The reason I throw in 8, and I know the traditional is 7, is a number of years ago, the people who examine these things suggest that the 8th would be Zealandia, which is part of it, and goes against the common thinking that it's a break off from Australia, albeit a separate continent. It's only about 5% above water, but have been on all of them. I just wanted to clear that up for people who think I didn't know the difference, but this goes back to the concept of Pangea, which is way back in antiquity, where you had one landmass that has now separated.
Now, addressing where we are today, we have a ton of stuff to cover here before the end of the show. So briefly, I want to touch upon all of this. We have gone through phases now of what a UFO was in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, the shapes, the way that they appear and disappear, and radar, sensor data, eyewitness testimony, putting abductions and contact phenomena to the side. Let's just talk about what is being seen. It has changed all the way through to today, where interdimensional is an overused word. We use this a lot. I think part of it is so we can start to understand the phenomena better. But we're now moving into that. And then you have the testimony from David Grosh in front of raised his hand and swore under testimony that he was telling the truth. And Congress was hearing some pretty fantastic tales. True or not, they were hearing this on Capitol Hill. It appeared that most of Congress and elected leaders don't know anything about this, or a secret access program, or SCI, compartmentalized information. All of this apparently has been kept from them, those who are cutting the checks and arranging the budgets. Were you surprised by this? If you take David Grush at face value and the reaction of Congress at face value, is that where we are today, that elected officials aren't privy to this information? And
the answer to that is yes, not privy. B, I think the critical issue is this is not a voting issue. Right. So when you get to the general public or the interested, yeah, maybe does it compete with, going to war, occupation of cities, a host of other issues, certainly not their own personal economic circumstances. This is very much a niche issue. There was a congressman there, I've written, I won't say who it was, but who, as you know, this was in the early 90s, we were trying to get congressional hearings, and talking to a congressman who thought he could do that. And I was, Senator Goss says, can you take a 20-point hit in the polls? And he said, yes. By the way, he's since lost out and is now in the civilian sector. But I did not take that lightly. I'll give you one example that's specifically related. Do you know Claiborne Pell, Senator Pell?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was the most senior senator, Democrat in that. One time, he actually, MUFON was having the festivities in Washington, D.C., and he stopped by. That literally followed him to his grave. I mean, the Washington Post obituary, which is still up, you can find it, talks about how he was, a UFO enthusiast and all that. Like I said, he did have some interest in these areas, but, like I said, and they were not mentioning that as a good thing, just for people. So you have the people who are intensely interested in these areas, but, I would say this is close to kryptonite. In middle America, if you're a congressperson trying to run. Now, a few of them are doing it, and they are getting some information out, and the bricks are coming down a bit, but there's been a huge stigma that has been attached to that. I usually tell people you won't see the scars,
right.
You can get beat up over those things.
He was a nice guy. He is a nice guy. He's very smart, very, very dignified. He had a very regal. I met him, and very, very, man. I just want to say, carried himself. He was regal. He was a good guy. I think that he truly wanted to support the community.
He was interested, but my point was that the press basically crucified him on that, and their assumption was this would be a bad thing. that a different topic. I was going to give you one. Well,
going back to David Grush though, and then I want to move on. We have other things that we too much to do. We'll do another show here soon, and we'll do some other deep dives. But David Grush, and I know that you've listened to that and watched that, and we all did. It was pretty amazing testimony. What was your takeaway from David Grush? Do you think that the subcommittee was buying what he was selling? Do you think that the public, what he was saying was some of the biggest news potentially in the history of humanity?
No, that's where I disagree.
Let me finish though.
Okay.
It didn't. If it was what he was saying, it would have had legs, but the testimony tended to die away. And that, why do you think that was?
Well, that's the point. I think, as I said, politically, it's kryptonite.
Right.
It may change a bit, and it is changing over time. Acceptance is there. Remember, if you're in Congress, your first job is to get reelected. That's where all their focus is. Supposed to be supporting your constituent. That's bullshit. They focus on getting reelected. They take the temperature and say, what does the public think? Now, again, your audience is going to be intensely interested in the area and the rah. They're this much of the voters.
Yeah, no, it seems like somebody's
knows
playing,
that.
Yeah, somebody's playing the UFO card. Yeah, they're UFO constituents. I agree with that. You're right, though. It is a very small part, or is it a bigger part than we know? Yeah, that's now.
But again, you get to the voting issue. What are the issues that people vote on? And UFOs is not one of them, except for a very tiny subset. You want to put UFOs compared to abortion?
See, yeah, I would debate that.
It's not debating it. I'm talking about the size of the audience for whom that is a critical issue.
I would say potentially the UFO issue is a bigger issue than that amongst non-UFO people. Yeah, I would say that. You know why? When you look at the success of who's got the #1 podcast in the world, who's the biggest celebrity? Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan.
Right? Yeah, Joe Rogan. Okay. So hundreds and hundreds, the most influential entertainer and face on planet Earth is Joe Rogan. Okay. What does he talk about? UFOs.
The
telepathy.
You did have Luna on, but
wait. Let's take it to the next level. What unseated Joe Rogan? What was bigger? The telepathy tapes. And the telepathy tapes took over as #1 for 6 weeks. Why? It wasn't this community that was supporting the telepathy tapes. It was the rest of the world that was wondering about this phenomenon. And the people that keep Joe Rogan at #1 it's not the UFO community, John. It's people outside of the community with an interest in this subject. And that's why I think it's a huge subject. If something else was bigger, Rogan would cover that, or we would see that in the public eye. So I would say that, yeah, I would say the phenomenon is huge outside of this community.
It is big. It is, again, not a voting issue. By the way, I'm going to see Diane in a couple of days.
She's amazing.
Yeah, be with her at the IONS conference. That's near death.
I'm going to see her. I'm going to see her in 2 weeks myself out here in LA and San Diego.
Yeah. And yeah, those tapes are impressive. I'll give her a plug. Reading her book right now.
Yeah.
Have that here. I do recommend it. I know most of the people that have commented on it. I could probably do a whole different show on autism and telepathy. But that, I suspect that a lot of this had to do with the autism issue, which is fairly big because of the number of people now somewhere on the spectrum understanding autism is a spectrum of things. By the way, where this crosses over, early 90s, there was something called TREAT, the Treatment and Research into Experienced Anomalous Trauma. And I know because I was sponsoring, Victoria and I were sponsoring that conference in Santa Fe, and the whole thing on autism came up. That certainly would support some of the things that Diane is now saying. This was decades before she'd even begun the research in the area, but
it's all connected, isn't it?
Yes.
See,
well, that's
it's all connected. When ET comes and lands on the 405, all right. You know what the message is going to be? I'm going to tell you, this is my crystal ball, John. This is my crystal ball. This is from Jimmy Church. You know what ET is going to tell us? It's not going to be global warming. It's not going to be pollution. It's not going to be a cure for cancer. It's not going to save humanity. No, it's not going to be any of that. You know what it's going to be? Consciousness. That's what they're going to tell us. It's all about here. If you're going to evolve, if you're going to take the next step, you need to figure that out because it's all about consciousness. And I firmly believe that's the case.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree with the point. I'm not convinced that ET is going to come and tell you that, though. But there are spiritual connections. That's one of the things people don't want to address in these areas with, all of these topics.
Well, what do we do? We'll talk about Bledsoe now. We'll touch upon this. What do we do with what is going on when me and my friends go out in my backyard here in the Mojave Desert, right? And look up into the Milky Way and go, okay, show us something. And all of a sudden, some blue crazy thing flies by and does a dance. I don't know what's going on, but it's not coincidence. Something is connected to our consciousness.
But it's certainly not new either.
No, it's not new. It was in the Bible.
And more recent, my friend, you're familiar with the Monroe Institute with Bob Monroe. That was one of his sticks, was going out there and calling down. He did that with my mentor, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who was able to go out and sure enough get things to appear. Now, as you know, Chris does this on a routine basis. I might, if you'll let me tell you my story on that, because I had heard Chris, and I'm going like, boy, that's a terribly complex, story, all kinds of aspects to it. I do recommend his book, UFO of God. But, I had met him. He had told me this all lengthy thing. And Victoria and I went with him and his daughter, Emily, down back to the site and came back up. It gets late, so it's just getting dark. And he was describing what's going on. And all of a sudden he goes, "Oh, I think they're here." And that thing pops into view and goes zipping off. And I saw that.
Okay, wait, John, what did you see? What happened?
Well, that's hard to say, but what happened was something just popped into view. It was bright, and I can't say it was a craft or whatnot, and then went zipping off.
How did you get an idea of altitude?
No, you remember, it's basically getting night there. It was hot. Now, I've had one other prior sighting in Washington, and that's where we saw something going across the sky and stop. Initially, I thought it was a satellite, and I was using third-gen night vision goggles. And you go, satellites don't stop. But that was not. But this one was the temporal relationship between Chris saying, "I think they're here," and this thing popping into view just a few seconds later. And obviously, I wasn't prepared. I wasn't thinking about, let me take the parameters of it or try to get the sight. And it was high and it was fast and it didn't last long, but it's that relationship. And this is, of course, what Chris does, as you know, when they go out to call them in, if you will.
Mm-hmm. I've seen him do it.
It definitely got my attention.
We were a couple of weeks ago. We were all at the Psy Games, and one night we went up with Chris. Were you there? Did you go up with us? Were you there that night?
Well, there were 2 nights. They went up Friday night. Saturday night is the one I think you're going to talk about.
Yeah, Saturday night. Yeah. I got to tell you, I've seen a lot of stuff and things, but and there was a few moments with Chris that night. This was naked eye. I have night vision. I have 3rd gen, just like you, and I've got all the gear. But this was me standing out there, naked eye, right? All of us. There was probably, I don't know, 100 of us out there, maybe 200, and all, man, this thing came in and did some curly cues. Yeah, that was pretty wild, man. Even for me, I was like, well, woo.
And he has posted those, so they are available for people who want to see it.
Oh, really? Are they posted?
Yeah. He posted it. Yeah.
That was the other stuff. Okay, that was great. But that curly cue, wow. Wow. Yeah. And let me tell you what's crazy about that, John. That shit goes on all the time, but we're not looking up.
Well, we're not looking up. That has a lot to do with why don't you see things, and now, as you know, with the cell phones, everybody's got their nose in. They miss what's going on in the daytime, let alone at night.
Now, what do we do? What does that tell you about consciousness? I mean, is that the one thing that is connecting the entire universe? Is that the singularity that everybody wants to try to figure out?
My guess is the answer is yes. One of the things that I found most interesting, because many people think that we have some kind of ELF, extremely low frequency thing of some kind. But one of the programs beyond Skin did, but went back to, I had been with them the first time at Monroe Institute, but put Chris inside a shielded room, and he's still aware of what's going on outside, which says it's not electromagnetic. It's got to be more fundamental than that.
I am going to, little side note, little private thing, but I'll disclose it now. I'm gonna be at Monroe for a week in December. So I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna start in kindergarten and hopefully graduate after 7 days. You know the process. You know what I'm going to be going through. I'm really looking forward to it.
But when I went through, Bob was there.
Well, I think we all have a brain. We all have a soul. We all have consciousness. We all have that, but we don't understand it. And I want to just understand more about myself and consciousness and what we all have inside of ourselves. And
it's a great place. I do recommend it.
I can't wait. Well, now back to my question earlier about how things have evolved over the decades. And it seems that now we have a better understanding on the theoretical physics side of things and science and faster than light travel and what may be done to get around the universe, where you're not traveling for 100,000 years in a ship, just cruising along because the universe is a big place, right? And that the ability to, just jump around and do what you need to do in real time, where virtually no time passes, would answer a lot about what Chris is seeing and what Chris is drawing, and the rest of us, and what this phenomenon may be. It visits us all the time because it's easy, not because it's some difficult process crossing the universe, right?
Well, you've entered a very critical statement or word, and that is time. Because one of the things that becomes clear is that our understanding of time is wrong. And not sure what it is, but the theories that past, present, and future are all simultaneously occurring. And it's very hard because in the West, we tend to think of time literally from left to right. We think of it over here. There was a past that's going on, and this is the flow. There are other perceptions with other cultures that see it different. However, well, we had mentioned the remote viewing. One of the big issues there was precognitive and retrocognitive remote viewing, where you can see incidents that happened in the past and develop that, as well as the precognitive that this is what's going to happen. Yeah. So as I say, you want complexity, you're now entering a real complexity.
If we accept, like I have, that consciousness exists outside of the physical and it is ever present everywhere, then it is easier to not only grasp, but to accept those ideas about time.
Well, my basic belief system is a bit more fundamental, and that is that the physical arrives from consciousness. This goes back to Max Planck, where it says that, the physical world, us now, talking on this system and all the physical things that are there, actually arose from consciousness. As he said, you can't get behind consciousness.
Looking at the clock, going back to Grush, and not only Grush, but so many eyewitnesses and researchers have discussed this over the years, and that is alien bodies on ice, alien bodies preserved, alien bodies that have lived, ET that survived crashes and were our guests on this planet. What can you add to that? Did you hear about any of that through your military career? Is there anything that you're comfortable about talking about today?
Well, the short answer would be no. Comfortable talking about it. I have heard the same stories that you have that have been around for a long time. So some of this we mentioned before, Bill Coleman. I know the stuff he told me about it, and yeah, it would be very interesting, I think, from if you're a biological standpoint, if you had ET, to understand the ET genome system, assuming that there is such. So I've heard the stories. I'm like, I think you and everybody else say, okay, show me the crap.
Well, going back to, this is a small circle of people, but if you go back to Kit Green or any of the any of the, how do I want to say this, the intellectuals that were part of the insider group going back have talked about seeing pictures, have talked about seeing documents and seeing evidence of ET in our presence here with our military and with our governments and with laboratories around the world, communication and interviews and film being shot of this. Did you ever see any of that evidence, which is something that many of your friends have all talked about seeing? Did you ever see any of that?
No. And I've heard all of those stories, and I know all the people that you're talking about.
Right. I know.
Personal friends. But we have different, when you get to the first-hand data, our sets are different.
The comments from Kit Green, I'm only asking this because, these are people that you know. When Kit Green said, this is not a one-off thing, this is many times over the years, where Kit Green said he saw the Roswell photographs of the autopsy, he saw the film, and what was in the alien autopsy film was identical to what, or very close to what he saw. And now that tells me one of two things. One, Kit Green is absolutely batshit crazy. Or two, the government did do this. The government does have these images and this film and this documentation, and Kit Green saw it. Kit Green's a very credible guy, and he's somebody that you know. I don't think he would make this up. Do you?
Well, those are different questions. I respect Kit. I've known him for a long time. Very intelligent. I've heard all the stories that you're mentioning. When you ask, have I seen it? The answer is no.
But it would indicate to me, which is what I'm actually asking you. Sorry, man, John, I have so much passion for these subjects, and I'm trying to get to the bottom of it. But I guess the direct question that I'm asking you is, if we take Kit at face value, and we should, then the government did perform autopsies. The government does have film of this and images and documentation, doesn't it? If we take Kit at face value,
he is not alone at making these. But as you know, well, I've even heard Eric, again, whom I worked with, talking about the different types of ETs that are here and interacting. Everybody's waiting for the shoe to drop. Say, okay, here it is. And
what now? I wanted to ask you this a while ago, before this show, when Eric Davis had a quote attributed to him in the New York Times in another Blumenthal Leslie Kane article. Buried in the article, it wasn't in the top, it should have been the lead headline, but buried down, right? If you paid attention, there's a quote from Eric Davis in there that says, "We are in possession of flying saucers, not of this earth." Right there, right? The New York Times vet their sources 3 times.
oh,
To put that in the article, I would say that the New York Times did their due diligence.
yeah,
You know Eric pretty well.
yeah.
Just don't be short with me, John. Do you think that? Did you ever ask Eric about that? And was Eric ever exposed to that kind of information?
I would not know. Remember, NIDS shut down by 2000. So when you're talking about 14, I was not involved in OSAP or ATIP program. And by that time, he's working as a sub under Hal at EarthTech. But I'd say they've got to speak for themselves. Like everybody else, again, is, okay, where is all of this? Everybody, you've now got X number of whistleblowers that have come out and said, I'm involved. I will say, and a guy I respect a lot that I'm sure, Gary Nolan,
Mm-hmm.
and he's one who says ET's here and has been here kind of all along. He's the only person that I have personally met who said, I did it, that he met somebody who did it. So everybody beyond that is friend of a friend.
Right.
And all of the people, even Gruss says, I never saw, but I've developed this information that points in this direction. As I said, Jim Summervan's a friend. I think he's impeccable. Still got problems. Again, my firsthand data is different from theirs. So.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? That is a fantastic point. Those that do know, you have never heard their name in public and may never hear their name in public, right? You know what I'm saying?
I will throw out another name that I think is critical, particularly in my venue. And again, unfortunately died. And I did mention him once he had died. And that's Dean Judd. You ever heard that name?
Yeah, of course.
Because, well, you say, of course. Dean was a technical director for SDI.
Yes, he was.
But he was later the NIO, the National Intelligence Officer for Science and Technology. He knew space architectures inside out. Dean was a close personal friend. I talked to him 2 days before. I was very shocked when I got an email from his son saying, you're on a list of people to be notified. We talked about this in depth. There were times, just so you know, that I touched on some things, not in this area, but in some other ones where he just said, we're not talking about that. Clearly I had, as I said, you tripped over boxes from time to time. It had nothing to do with UFOs. Like I say, we talked about this for years and never indicated any person. Now, as you know, I also interviewed I briefed, it wasn't an interview, with General Abramson when he was the director of SDI. Again, I am totally sure that we caught him by surprise. Now, what you've got to believe is that he's got the biggest, most expensive, complex program in all of the Department of Defense with the biggest budget.
Maybe in the history, maybe the most complex system in human history when you think about it. Yes. SDI, I can't imagine. Now, see, here's the thing with those two guys and anybody else at that level with SDI. They are collecting sensor data from orbital platforms. And if anything was going to show up on, I'm just going to use the term radar, right? If anything's going to show up, they would certainly know.
And at the end of it was about a 2-hour briefing, and I had an entourage with me from various agencies. And at first, he was shocked, literally. This was not something he knew anything. It was very unusual in that normally when you brief at that level, 3-star level, there's pre-briefs and papers that go ahead so they know something about who you are and why you're coming, what you're going to talk about. You don't want the boss to look dumb, right? So we've got to give him the right question. That didn't happen in this case. Was really basically stunned at the topic in general. By the time we got done, because I had done UFO 101 and then gone around the room with the various agencies, And he says, okay, you got my attention. I can't touch this. But, and this gets to your point, he said, if you can tell me what to look for, he says, we're soon going to be monitoring more of space than anybody's ever done before.
That's right.
If you can tell me what to look for, I'll put it in the algorithms, but I can't touch it. And the reason was, if you know anything about the Pentagon, and one of the things that used to bug me all the time, people said, I'm going to go find the money. Like there's pots of money someplace around. Now, when you're going to find the money, means you're raiding somebody else's program and getting it reprogrammed over. And he did lose $1 billion after that. But for him, the visibility would have just been too great. And their knives were out all over trying to attack or get the money from the program, because, like I said, it was at $5 billion at the time, as I recall. So
we're going to have another congressional UFO hearing on September 9th. You have always advocated and pushed for hearings. Now we've had quite a few at this point. Have things changed on Capitol Hill, and do you expect anything different on September 9th?
Sure, that's if they changed, yes, to a degree. Acceptability, I think, is higher. Do I expect anything to come out of it? No. And one of the things I heard one of the congressmen talking about it, he says, look, I got 5 minutes to ask questions, particularly in the open forum. And so I've got to ask some simple, straightforward question, and one that they know the answer. You never ask a question you don't know the answer to. Yeah, and that's politically too risky. So do I expect them to do anything or go anything? Not really. I am not enamored with Arrow. Have been interviewed by them. Not sure what the game is, but don't trust the overall outcome. It does appear that if this is anybody doing cover-up officially, I would say that certainly has perpetuated. And the problem there is you brought in people to that assignment. This is not what we call career enhancing. In other words, this is the kind of job you would go to when your next job is retirement. I say you're not bringing in the best and brightest by any stretch of the imagination. By the way, another key guy, I probably won't mention him because he's still alive, but my boss, my last job was Director of Advanced System Concepts at Laboratory Command. It's a command that no longer exists. My boss had come from BDM and went to ballistic missile defense as 3-star. Briefed him on the topic. Believe me, it did not go well. And again, it wasn't like he was covering up. It's just, this is bullshit.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what did you make of, we've just got a couple of minutes left. What did you make of Luna's comments on Rogan? She was not pulling punches. I think she spoke about what she knew. There were certain aspects of it that I think delved into national security issues, and she held back. But she's saying not of this earth. She's not holding back on that.
Harder comment, and I will save you getting into any political stuff regarding that. But
I don't do politics on the show.
Right.
But I do the conspiracy of politics well, John.
Well, you've got to remember that if you want that she's got the Kennedy assassination coming up and so on. You want the ultimate conspiracy. All of that's involved in the Joe Rogan interview.
But she is part of the committee. She's an elected official. I think she's extremely bright and very intelligent.
Yeah, that's true.
But I just don't think that she gives a crap what the media or anybody else is going to say about her, that she is pursuing this, and I think she's doing it on the behalf of the community, which is strange to say in this political environment that we don't really see this.
I think what you'd say is she does not come with the political gravitas necessary to push it.
Well, because
sure
don't we
who
see
does.
this, not getting into politics, but one of the things that we see over and over today, it's not the constituents that matter. It's political contributions and corporations and other things that drive a political agenda. It's not ever the UFO issue, is it?
Well, no, and this is one issue where you do get bipartisan support.
Isn't that funny?
You got Senator Warner and some others.
Burleson.
Actually, our Secretary of State was one of them. Of course, he's now out of the loop and not about to touch this sort of thing in his current job.
You're talking about Rubio. Well,
little Marco.
Yeah, when Marco, that was one of the best sound bites. Maybe 5 years ago, Marco's going through the airport. I think TMZ hit him up, right? So, what do you think about them aliens, right? Put the microphone right in his face. And back then, it was a different world for him, right?
Yep.
And he was like, well, yeah, aliens are here, and I'm going to get to the bottom of this with the Senate Intelligence Committee. Yeah, it was pretty fascinating to see that.
Well, the issue again on disclosure is disclose what? Existence is real life someplace else, or not only is ET here, but walking among us.
And we've had, now is that, we've just got 90 seconds left. Is disclosing the past, right? That we have had contact and we've known about this for 75, 80 years. Is that more dangerous than just saying, yeah, there's life out there and we verified that there's life out there and we're not alone, versus we've known about this for 80 years and we've got spacecraft and we've got little gray aliens on ice at Right Pat?
Well, politically, that's much more dangerous, of course.
Very.
Yeah. And again, the notion that there's life elsewhere in the universe is absolute.
John, thank you so much. When I get you back on the show, we're going to do 2 hours of ayahuasca. Can we do that? Will you do that with me? Will you do that with me?
Are you providing the ayahuasca?
No, we're not going to do that on the air.
Oh, okay.
Man, that would be a good show, but that'd be an 8-hour show. That'd be an 8-hour show.
Yes, but I don't know how you do the graphics to go along with it.
Yeah, I know, right? But I would love to bring you back and discuss that. It is just fascinating to me. So invitation is there. Let's bring you back and do a full show on that.
Okay.
You down? Are you down?
But I would broaden it to probably shamans around the world.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Ayahuasca is a piece of that.
It is, but only because it appears to me that ancient cultures, all the way through to today, but ancient cultures had a full grasp on consciousness and the possibilities of dimensions and other realities and how to go there to seek answers for life in this reality. And this has been going on for a long time, and we're just now catching back up to it, and you've been chasing that. So let's do a show on that. It'd be so much fun. All right, John, keep doing what you're doing, my man. Thank you so much. Perfect night on the show. Thank you.
Namaste.
The best. John B. Alexander, everybody. Perfect night on the show. The next one is going to be a humdinger. I can promise you that. What am I doing tomorrow night? Does anybody know? Let me pull this up. I'll tell you what I'm doing tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is, Amy Westmoreland is here. We're going to be talking about manifesting life. John and I hung out with Amy a few weeks ago at the Psy Games. She was so much fun. She's so smart. and I just had to bring her on the show. So we're doing that tomorrow night. Amy Westmoreland is here. So there you go. Thank you, John. Perfect night on the show. And for everybody else, all I've got is go back, Lee Tappy. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Go back, Lee Tappy.